Hello Internet, Josh Sundquist here. I'm very excited to be reading to you the first chapter of my debut novel, Love and First Sight. Before I do so, I should say thank you so much for pre-ordering it. If you're watching this video, I think that you pre-ordered it, and I'm really grateful that you did, and that you're interested in reading it. So, here we go. The first chapter. I feel like it might be really long. I'm kind of curious, how much am I going to be reading to you today? Let's see, I haven't really read the first chapter since, I don't know, since it was in editing. So I'm also just kind of curious what it's like. Let's see. Oh, that's not so bad. It's 11 pages. I was kind of worried that it was like 50, and this video was going to be hours. Alright, so here we go. Love and First Sight. Reading beginning in chapter 1. Look at that. See, it's like a little visual pun there, how it goes from see-through text to like you can see it. Alright. Yeah, I'm probably going to stop a lot while I'm reading this and just make comments to you about the book. I will attempt to give the characters voices. We'll see how that goes. Probably not well. But I think there's not too many characters here in this first chapter, so that's good. Vice Principal Larry Johnson extends his hand. To clarify, I don't see him do this. I hear the swish of his shirt sleeve. Nice to meet you, William. The fabric sound plays again, the hand retracting. I'm sorry, I guess you can't do that now, can you? You probably want to feel my face? He grabs my arm and smacks my palm against his cheek, knocking me off balance so I have to step into the musk of his aftershave. Where do you normally start? Eyes, ears, nose, mouth? He shifts my fingers across the front of his face with each suggestion. His skin is rough and pockmarked, like the outside of an orange. No, actually, I don't do that, I say, pulling my hand away. I identify people based on their voices. And also, I add, I can't resist. Yes? He asks, all eager to please. Well, I don't usually touch faces, but I am gifted with a heightened sense of smell that allows me to recognize a person's pheromones, which are concentrated just below the ear. So if you wouldn't mind, I touch my finger to my nose. His excitement drops. Oh, you want to smell my ear? Pheromones are like faces to me. Only if it's not too much trouble, sir. Oh, no trouble at all. No trouble. Certainly, I would like to accommodate you. He steps close enough that I can feel the heat of his body, which is a signal that A, he is falling for it. Sighted people always do, the suckers. And B, I've taken this joke far enough. I don't actually want my nose anywhere near his old guy earwax after all. Mr. Johnson, I'm kidding. I hold up a hand to stop him. It sinks deep into fat rolls, presumably. That's a tough word to say for some reason. I hold up a hand to stop him. It sinks deep into fat rolls, presumably around his midsection. I hope. I don't know, I think that presumably around his midsection, I hope. I feel like that line, I hope, was added at some point in editing. I don't really remember writing it. I do think it's funny. I think maybe my editor must have suggested that. So well done, Pam. That's the name of my editor. Not that you're watching this. Presumably around his midsection. I hope. A joke, sir. I don't want to smell your ear. When I pull my hand away, I wonder if it leaves a visible handprint or even fingerprints in his squishy flesh. I've heard that happens when you press an open palm against a soft surface, like sand, dough, or wet paint. Oh, right, yes. He lets out a forced chuckle that sounds like a wheezy smoker's cough. Yeah, joke. Yes, very funny. Mr. Johnson's voice is deep and grisly. If you listen carefully, you learn that a particular set of vocal cords produces audio vibrations unlike any other in the world. Voices are the fingerprints of sound. Shall we head to your first class? He asks. He grabs my arm from behind and starts to push me out of the front office. I'm sure he thinks it's helpful to lead me like that, but I instinctively swap our positions, so I am holding his arm instead. I prefer we walk like this, I say. Now I'm in control. I can let go at any time. Yes, all right, that's fine, he says. I've spent most of my 16 years around other blind and visually impaired people, so this is the first time I've actually had to execute a Heinz break in real life. Fortunately, Mrs. Chin made me practice so many times I could do it automatically with Mr. Johnston. The main purpose of this little arm reversal is that it puts me in charge. To put it in dating terms, I can now be the dumper rather than the dumpy. I'll pause here to tell you, so a Heinz break is something that if you are a blind person and you go through like sort of therapy or whatever, where you like learn skills that are useful for a person who doesn't have sight. A Heinz break is like if sometimes a sighted person, in their effort to be helpful to a blind person, will come up and just sort of like grab them, like let's say that I'm a blind person, someone might grab me behind my arm and sort of push me in a direction where they think they're guiding me, but really they're pushing me. And so then I, as the blind person, I don't have control over the situation. And maybe as a person you don't really want their directions or whatever. So a Heinz break is a maneuver by which it's almost like a judo move where you're like moving your arm and then you're like swinging around and you're grabbing the back of their arm. So it's like a reversal where they were holding you, but now you're holding them. So in that way they can lead you, but if you don't actually want to be led by that person, you can let go at any time instead of them like pushing you or grabbing you and you losing control of your mobility. So anyway, the first few drafts of the book, I had like a really long description of all that. It was like very, very technical. It was like step 1, I like bend my elbow 30 degrees. Step 2, I place my left hand on his right hand. And my editor was like, this is just too technical. People can just kind of infer what a Heinz break is. But as you can tell by the fact that I just paused for a minute to explain it to you, I'm still worried that you won't understand what a Heinz break is. But you, because you've watched this video, you will know. So anyway, Will is the name of our protagonist. And obviously he's with Mr. Johnston. So back to our story. Mr. Johnston just grabbed Will from behind. Will executed a Heinz break. So now Will is holding Mr. Johnston's arm so that Mr. Johnston can guide him. Back to Will's voice. To put it in dating terms, I can now be the dumper rather than the dumpy. I've heard the horror stories. Blind people standing on street corners waiting for a crosswalk to change, only to have a well-meaning but annoying stranger come up from behind, grab their arm, and say, overly loud, of course, because they always assume that we are all deaf too, "Let me help you!" and shove them across a street they were not intending to cross. Then the stranger lets go and disappears into the void. "You're welcome!" leaving the blind person stranded on an unknown street corner. That's the thing that happens. If you don't know the Heinz break, I feel the floor change from the carpet of Mr. Johnston's office to the hard tile of the hallway as I follow him through the doorway. Can we start at the front door, I ask. That's where I'll be coming in each morning, I assume. Isn't that where you came in today? He asks. Yes, but my mom took me from there to your office. Well then, simply imagine that instead of turning into the office, you walked in this direction toward the stairwell and you'll be on your way to first period. He starts to walk, presumably toward said stairwell. But I stand still, gripping his arm tightly so he is forced to stop. Behold the mighty power of the Heinz brake. It doesn't work like that. I can't. I drift off. I hate sentences that start with I can't. But as it happens, I was born completely blind. So one thing I truly can't do is imagine an overhead map and then make up different routes or shortcuts. I can walk from A to B, yes, but only if I memorize a list of actions. How many steps to take and when to turn, and then how many more steps to take before I'm there. I can sniff odors like a bloodhound and echolocate sounds like a bat, but it is simply impossible for me to infer a new route using my imagination. This was the thing that I thought was really fascinating, and so I was trying to think of a story situation to show it. Something to clarify is that Will is born blind and born totally blind. Now that's exceptionally rare. Most people who are legally blind have some sight, like they can see some, at least differentiate between light and dark. And people who are totally blind generally are totally blind due to like an accident or disease or something like that. So it's exceptionally rare to have someone who is born totally blind. Like so rare that it's really difficult to research them because there's so few of them around. You can't really like put together a study that has like enough participants to really draw significant conclusions. But what we do know about people who are born totally blind is that their brains develop fundamentally differently than a sighted person's in the way that they process space. Because if you've never seen anything, you have no point of reference. It's like impossible for a sighted person to imagine because your brain is, if you're sighted, and I'm assuming you probably are, just statistically if you're watching this video, your brain it has so much visual data in it, and depending on kind of your personality, you might even kind of think visually. When you see ideas, you see them sort of laid out beside each other. But if you've never had any visual input into your brain, that doesn't happen. So what happens is, in that case, it's impossible for a character or a person like Will to imagine like a map from overhead. Like he can't imagine it because he has no frame of reference for like the way something visual like that would be that is bigger than what he could reach out and touch. So so a person in that situation, it's like if you taught them walk 5 steps forward and then 3 steps right, they could totally like learn that and do that route. But if you said now walk directly from A to B, like on if it's a triangle, instead of walking like forward and then right, walk like this, right? But that person, they would not be able to imagine like what a direct route would be. Like if you turn them and said, okay, now it's 30 degrees, now just walk in that direction. Obviously they could do that, but it's like they couldn't imagine how to like find a shortcut, I guess, is like Will said. If he couldn't just imagine like, well, if I'm walking through this route in the hallway, I wonder if I could walk this other way and that would be shorter. It just wouldn't be something that he could process. So that's a fun fact. Look, this is Will speaking. Look, Mr. Johnson, can we just start at the front door, please? That would be much easier for me. Are you sure you don't want us to assign you a full-time aide? The state would gladly pay. I know, but that's not why I transferred here. Having a babysitter walk me around school every day is not going to help my street cred. Honestly, it's not about my street cred. I transferred because I want to prove that I can live independently in the sighted world. No dependence on charity. No neediness. My parents sent me off to the school for the blind back when I was little, right after the incident. It was, quote, for my own good, to, quote, protect me, and blah, blah, blah. But if I want to eventually land my dream job, to make a name for myself as the Stevie Wonder of journalism, it's not going to happen within the confines of the blind bubble. Excuse me, the visually impaired community. I have to go mainstream. I hear Mr. Johnston sigh, but when he speaks, there's a hint of sympathy in his voice, as if maybe he was once young enough to care about his own street cred. Or maybe he still does. Very well, William. To the front door we shall go. He guides me there. First, I need to get my bearings, I say. Well, the door is in front of you, the wall is beside... No, I say, pulling my iPhone out of my pocket. I literally need compass bearings. My compass app tells me I will enter the building facing west. Got it. West. Seriously, how did anyone get by before talking smartphones? I would give you a demonstration of this right now, but I'm actually filming into my smartphone. But Siri is a remarkable development for people who are blind and visually impaired, because Siri can do a lot of really interesting stuff that you wouldn't even think of. For example, I tested this kind of stuff when I was writing the book, but so for a person like Will, cardinal directions, that is like compass directions, are a really important navigational tool, like to know turn west on this street or turn west down this hallway. So to get started on that, to know your initial bearing or direction, you could there's a compass built into your smartphone, and Siri can tell you, you can be like, Siri, open compass, what direction am I facing? Or Siri, what compass direction am I facing? Or there's some kind of command like that. I can't remember the exact wording. You can pause the video and try it for yourself on your smartphone. But anyway, she'll be like, you're facing such and such degrees this way. So it's a pretty useful feature that you wouldn't otherwise probably think of in your smartphone if you're not orienteering in the woods or a person who is blind and can use that information to help navigate more easily. Mr. Johnson, let's head to English, if possible. Sorry, that was the wrong tonality. Mr. Johnson, let's head to English. If possible, I say, please walk in a straight line and tell me when we are going to change directions. Oh, I see our cat Scar walked into the video at some point in the last few minutes. Very well. We walk 12 steps west, 23 steps south, and then turn west again. Mr. Johnson tells me we are at the base of a stairwell. I hear footsteps rushing by on both sides of us, students in a hurry to get to first period. Up to this point, I've kept my white cane folded in my back pocket. No use drawing attention to myself if I don't have to. But I'll feel safer using the cane on stairs. But I'll feel safer using the cane on stairs than relying on a vice principal with a lifetime total of 3 minutes experience guiding a blind person. I pull it out and, with a flick of my wrist, snap the whole thing open. People have told me this looks like a Star Wars lightsaber turning on. That's not a particularly helpful description for me, though, which also makes me wonder why it's called a, quote, white cane, unquote, in the first place, since the people who use them can't see its color. That's actually just something that I, Josh Sundquist, have always wondered about. Because the canes that blind people use are generally called a white cane. And it's why is it named something that is meaningless to them. It's like there's only 2 words in the name and we chose one word that just reminds them of a limitation they have. It seems weird to me, but that's the name of it. It's called a white cane. Anyway, I reach out for the handrail, but my fingers grab something soft instead. A body part, chest level, boob alert. Oh my God, I am so sorry. I totally didn't see you there, says a female voice. That's what a white cane will do for you. Not only can you get away with copping a feel, the girl assumes it was her fault and apologizes for it. Let me assure you, random girl, you have nothing to be sorry about. Completely my fault and my pleasure. That's a funny line. No problem, I tell her. I didn't see you either. She doesn't laugh. She's already gone before I say it, the sound of her footsteps lost in the shuffle. I hate that. When I discover I'm talking to someone who has already walked away, feels like when you tell some long story into your cell phone and you wonder why the person has been silent for a while and then you realize the call was dropped at some point. At the top of this flight of stairs, Mr. Johnson tells me we are going to turn 180 degrees and go up another. I continue to climb with one hand on the rail and the other pencil gripping my cane as it surveys the next step. Once we've reached the second floor, I fold the cane and return it to my back pocket. I can feel how the fabric of my jeans has stretched around that shape, the form of my folded cane. For the first time, I wonder if this distortion is visible. I don't really like that sentence. I don't know. I don't really remember that clause for the first time. Maybe that was editing, copy editing. Copy editing is like sort of the last round of editing, and a lot of it is just sort of these like grammatical fixes and things like that. So a lot of it's just more, and there's like hundreds of them, and you're kind of like, you approve them, but you're kind of just like, okay, that sounds okay. But anyway, because what I was trying to show, to the extent that I could in the book, is like things where a character or a person like Will, things that wouldn't be intuitive to him, and so I wanted him to like, but I wanted him to just always make assumptions or make guesses about what things might look like, but I wanted those assumptions to be wrong a lot of the times, so that we, so that we could understand sort of like where he was limited visually in imagining things. So, a person like Will, if he was real and he was writing a book, he would probably know when he was making a guess about something, and he probably wouldn't tell you, like what he was guessing it looked like, because he would be socially aware of things that he didn't know what they looked like, and he wouldn't just guess all the time what they looked like, because he would know that he would generally be wrong, and so there would just be no reason for him to like make guesses. Like if you were, say, talking to, I don't know, trying to think of an example. Like if you were talking to something you didn't understand at all, like, say you were talking to Stephen Hawking. This is an imperfect metaphor, but say you were talking to Stephen Hawking and he's like an expert in black holes. You wouldn't just like you wouldn't pretend to be knowledgeable of black hole. Like you wouldn't be like, so Stephen, I was thinking about black holes the other day, how the gravity in them is equivalent to like 100 joules per second, and they're, and how on average they're 3.1 miles across. Like you wouldn't just make up random stuff like that about black holes, because you'd be like, Stephen Hawking actually probably knows what black holes are like, so I'm not going to just make up information that he's going to immediately spot as wrong, right? So, and this is true because I've read in preparation for writing this book, I read like everything, like every every memoir pretty much that's ever been published by a person who is blind, I read it. Every movie that's depicted a blind person, most of the fiction, and then also just kind of a lot of non-fictional like things about neurology and like the neurology of blindness and how that would affect your brain. Which is all to say that, so I read a number of memoirs by people who were born blind, and they are actually like remarkably adept at what I would say writing or talking phonetically about the visual world. That is, by listening to the way other people describe things, they can sort of cite those descriptions back to you. They can recite them back without necessarily understanding without an idea of like what those things look like, but with an understanding of this is how people describe them, so this is the correct description, so to speak. So Will, in this sense, is unrealistic, in a sense that that a real person would not reveal to you their generally a real person wouldn't be this honest and this sort of vulnerable in exposing gaps in his perceptual abilities. So this is all a really long description or discussion about him. Silly Apple. Why is Apple always just randomly like, I need a password? Why do you need a password? I'm recording a video. So he's wondering about because he can feel that the cane, or that the back of his jeans have formed around the white cane where he keeps it in his back pocket. Like if you keep a cell phone in your back pocket, you know how eventually it'll form like the shape of the cell phone in your jeans. So he's like, he can feel that stretch in the fabric, but he's wondering, is that stretch visible? But he doesn't know, right? Because he's not seen it, so he's just wondering conceptually, is that a thing you could see? Now I think in earlier drafts, I can't remember, I described it in a different way in earlier drafts, so that he was like, making the wrong, the wrong assumption, but now I can't remember what that assumption was. But an example that we've seen already of Will making the wrong assumption is in that first scene when he puts his hand out and it runs into Mr. Johnson's belly, and so it sinks into fat rolls. And when I pull my hand away, I wonder if it leaves a visible handprint or even fingerprints. He wonders that because I've heard that when you press an open palm against a soft surface like sand or dough or wet paint, you can leave the fingerprints, right? Which is true. So he's heard about that, and he wonders, well, this fat is like soft. I wonder if that leaves a visible fingerprint. Now, obviously, he's incorrect about this. And again, if Will was a real person who was like, sort of socially conscious, he probably wouldn't tell you if he was wondering about that, because he'd realize this is a gap in my knowledge. I don't know, so I'm not going to reveal to people where the gaps are. But Will, being a fictional character, I can write him, sort of more vulnerable, because it's just it's written it's not written where he's self-consciously journaling. It's written in that just sort of first-person fiction voice where it's unclear why this person is talking to you, and so we assume that they are just giving that we are just seeing an unfiltered, honest depiction of their real thoughts. And that was a very long aside. All right. So he was just wondering if the distortion of where he keeps his white cane when it's folded in his back pocket is visible, which you, as a sighted person, again, if you're a sighted person, you immediately know, yeah, of course it's visible. But he does, it's just, if that's not a thing that people necessarily talk about, right? So he doesn't necessarily know. Here's an example of something like that, right? There's things that people talk about, but and then there's things that we don't necessarily explain, like the moon, right? When we say a moon is like a moon, it's a 3/4 full, it's a half moon, it's a quarter moon. Will eventually, spoiler alert, but not really a spoiler because it's in the jacket copy, the description. Will is going to eventually have an operation that will give him sight. This is a thing that happens occasionally, that people who are born blind will gain sight later in life, and those experiences, I read a lot about them because they are, really fascinating case studies for like what happens to Will. And they're also really insightful because they give you examples of this, of things that that a person like Will might make an assumption and assume incorrectly sometimes. So the example is that one of the people who had this operation in real life, this is true, when he eventually learned to be able to see and be able to identify shapes and perceive things, he was really shocked when he saw a quarter moon, because he always imagined that the moon would be shaped like pieces of pie. Because he knew it was circular, and then so he assumed when it was a quarter moon, it would be like a quarter, of the pie, right? That it would be, that, and when it was a 3/4 moon, it was just like one pie slice was cut out of the moon. Because, why would he not assume that? No one talks about that. We just say a quarter moon or a half moon, and we never explain, oh no, it's actually cut out in this sort of weird circular way. It's just not something people talk about. And so he heard that, he made an assumption. It turned out the assumption was incorrect, but he only found out that his assumption was incorrect because he gained sight and noticed that it was different. It's interesting, right? Footsteps drop all around us like a heavy rainstorm. As Mr. Johnston guides me 18 steps east through the crowded hallway, he shouts, "Clear a path, people! Blind student coming through! Blind student coming through!" Wow. Thanks, Mr. Johnston. I'm sure this is gaining me so many popularity points at my new school. My election as prom king is now all but assured. We pause at the door to my classroom so I can dictate the directions into my phone. Enter building, walk 12 steps west, turn south, walk 23 steps. I'll have Siri read them back to me after school until I've got the route memorized. Fun fact. Hopefully, well, I don't know. If you don't like my sides, I'm sure you got bored of this video and turned it off a while ago. I know we're moving very slowly in terms of actual story here. I have a friend who works for one of the major technology companies, and you know how, I just don't know if this is confidential, so if it is, I'm not gonna give you names. So you know how the voices of AI, like Siri, Alexa on Amazon Echo, Cortana on Microsoft, they, for whatever reason, they have these names and they're some kind of female voice. I always assumed that they were robot voices. They're actually real humans. There is a person who plays Siri, a voice actress. She is the voice of Siri. Her identity is super secret, but she these people actually get hired for these long-term contracts, and they just periodically go into studios and record everything. Record all these words. It's crazy, right? I just always thought it was a robot. But how weird would that be if you're, I don't know, you're at working at a fast food drive-thru or something, or you're get a phone call, you're at a call center, and the person's like, "Hey, I need to do this thing with my account," and you're like, "Siri? Is that you?" But then she signed confidentiality agreements, so what does she say? Who knows? Or can you imagine, for her, what it's like when she's like, "Hey Siri, what's traffic like?" And then she herself tells her about the traffic. That's weird. Anyway, so Will just recorded the directions into his phone so that he can have Siri, read them back to him the next day when he's back in school. "Attention everyone," says Mr. Johnson as soon as we cross the threshold into the classroom. His voice sounds pleased, maybe even surprised by its ability to silence the chattering room. This is Will, a student who was transferred to our school this year. He's blind. Perhaps because this is English class, he adds a helpful definition of the word. You can't see anything. Nothing at all. He pauses to allow the gravity of my tragic situation to sink in. Life is very difficult for him. Please offer him your assistance whenever you can, because you know I'm still standing right beside you, right? I interrupt. There's a snort of laughter from the students, and Mr. Johnston's arm stiffens against my fingers. It's probably unwise to make fun of your guide, the guy who has the capacity to lead you, say, directly into a brick wall. But come on, I don't need eyesight to know his speech was making the entire room squirm. Yes, William, he stammers. Listen, sorry, I appreciate your help, I say. Can you guide me to the teacher? I'm right here, William. Or do you prefer Will? Asks a female voice standing maybe 2 arm lengths away. Most people call me Will, I say. I'm Mrs. Everbrook. I'll take it from here, Larry. Very well, says Mr. Johnson. Will, I will meet you at the end of this period to escort you to your next class. He shuffles out. The bell hasn't rung yet, boys and girls, says Mrs. Everbrook. Until it does, you can go back to texting underneath your desks, and I'll pretend to... Messed up. The bell hasn't rung yet. Until it does, you can go back to texting underneath your desks, and I'll go back to pretending I don't notice you have your cell phones out of your lockers. So bad at accents. I'm pretty sure it says later she has a southern accent. That's why I've given her one. Also, that's why I did not read the audiobook of this book, because as you can tell, Mr. Johnston's voice changes dramatically every time he speaks. Like I can maybe do like a voice like one time, but I can never make it like the same voices over time the way like a professional audiobook reader can and needs to in fiction, I believe. Unlike Mr. Johnston's, hers sounds like a voice people listen to. Will, there's a desk open immediately to your right, she says. I sit. She continues. I was told you'd be in my class, so I've already talked to the library, and they can get you all the books we'll be reading this term. Do you prefer Braille or audiobooks? Braille, please. And thank you for talking to the library, No problem. Whatever else you need, just ask. I'm happy to help. Otherwise, you get the same treatment as everyone else. This is honors English, and I expect honors level work from you. Thank you, I say. That's very nice. You may change your opinion about... He says, thank you. That's very nice. What he means is it's nice that she is making allowances for him, but expecting him to perform equal to other students. Thank you, I say that's very nice. You may change that opinion after I grade your first paper. No one has ever accused me of being nice, but I try to be fair. Then I hope this request appeals to your sense of fairness. I type notes into my phone during class so that I can read it back. I type notes into my phone during class so that it can read them back to me later. Is that all right? Fine by me. Just don't let me Fine by me. Just don't let me catch you texting your girlfriend during class. If I had a girlfriend, I think. I dated several girls back at the school for the blind, but it would be different here. Dating a girl without a visual impairment, I couldn't help but be beholden to her, dependent, needy. Oh, no girlfriend, huh? She asks. How can you tell? Your inability to see doesn't stop your face from speaking what's on your mind. Well, I did meet a girl downstairs this morning. She seemed nice. Anything else? She was also very apologetic. I don't care about the personality of your crush, Will. I mean, any other accommodations you need. I wear one earbud in my ear because my phone reads everything on screen to me. The names of apps, the selections on menus, all that. The earbud will let me hear the phone without disturbing the class. How about that? Anyway, that's fine. You can use your head... Alright, she should be like, how about that? Like, technology, by golly, it's amazing these days. How about that? Anyway, it's fine. You can use your headphones. Just don't let me catch you... It's hard to do these, like, the interrupting bits, because you have to, like, change... I think, like, a professional audiobook reader would, like, learn the things really well, and I think usually they would, like, highlight each line of dialogue with a different color for each character, so they can immediately know, like, that's Mrs. Everbook's voice, that's Will's voice. How about that? Anyway, it's fine. You can use your headphones, just don't let me, let you. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get this line. It's gonna be amazing. How about that? Anyway, it's fine. You can use your headphones, just don't let you catch me listening to music in class. Got it. I was actually going to say anything other than country. What? Don't let me catch you listening to anything other than country music during my class. I'm not into country, so I guess I'll just be listening to you teach. I like you, Will. I think we're gonna get along just fine. Which is good, because it turns out I have her again for third period. And that class begins with a major social disaster. Cliffhanger! But that's the end of chapter 1, so there it is. You will have to eagerly await the arrival of Love at First Sight to your address. It comes out January 3rd, so expect it in the mail around that time, or if you got it at your local bookstore, then go pick it up at your bookstore on January 3rd, and you can find out about the social disaster that happens in third period. And yeah, if you're on social media, after you read it, please send me a tweet or a message on Instagram or however you like to communicate on social, and let me know like what you think of it. Think of it. Yeah, think of it. Great. We'll end this video just with me tripping over my words for the millionth time in the past 43 minutes that we have spent together. So thanks for hanging out for this extended period of time. I hope you enjoyed it, and most importantly, I hope you enjoy reading the book itself.